You know what? Let's hang out. Let's just sit back and chill. The cat closet is still new and trying to find its footing. My subscriber count is pretty evident of this. And that is why I think we should take a breather, just to get to know each other better. Become friends, if you will. Because I like to think that we have a connection. Well, do we? As we all know, my online alias is Chibi Neko, a name that I took back in the year 2000. But in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm known as the Dragon Lady, a name that doesn't have any meaning online. But if you were to mention it within my local Yu-Gi-Oh community, especially to the veteran players, they will know right away who you're talking about. So today I thought I'd talk about how I got the name Dragon Lady to begin with. It's not a name I got overnight, nor is it one I gave myself. I was trying to encourage my online alias, Chibi Neko, because that is the banner I place my personal pages under. I had the Gundam Wing rest pad, and later on I made the card closet. When I graduated college in 2002, my two friends and I bought the Yugi and Kaiba starter decks and spent the entire night learning and playing the game. And this is literal. We did not sleep at all that night, nor the next day. I even remember the power going out, so we had to duel by candlelight, as nice as that sounds. When that summer came to an end, I moved to my province's capital city for work and soon found out that there was an official tournament store sanctioned by Upper Deck. I did not really knew what that meant at the time, but all we cared about is that we could play Yu-Gi-Oh with others. At the time, my deck only consisted of the Kaiba starter deck with a few tweaks. I did not know what to expect, but needless to say, I lost. A lot. But this was good. I got to see how other people played and took notes on how to improve my deck. One thing I did notice that every time I got my Blue Eyes White Dragon out, most people were stumped. The only real way to beat him was with a board wipe card or equipping strong monsters with an equip card. And those were pretty circumstantial strategies at the time. Back then the only sets released were Legend of Blue Eyes and Metal Raiders, so there wasn't really enough to create a metagame quite yet. So you had to be creative when building your deck, and at the time, deck building was only bound to a limited list. There was no ban list. So yeah, imagine that. If you wanted to have both a Cyber and Fiber Jar in your deck, it was allowed. Because the Blue Eyes White Dragon was a tough monster to get around, I began to focus my deck around him. Dragons are my favorite mythical creature and I'm a huge Kaiba fan. Well, the Japanese one. I did not watch the English dub. I even wore a dragon pendant every time I competed. It was a way of saying that, yup, I'm the dragon chick. After buying more cards, building, and testing, I realized the deck did not really focus on the Blue Eyes per se, but when you think about it, it was really a Lord of D deck. And one move I noticed that became really effective was using the Flute of Summoning Dragon to get out two dragons at the same time. And it did not have to be a Blue Eyes. Any two dragons worked well, especially with the Mountain Field card in play. The added protection Lord D provided was a nice bonus, because unless my opponent had a board wipe card like Regeki or Dark Hole, my dragons were pretty safe most of the time. Using the Flute of Summoning Dragon basically overwhelmed my opponents by having 3 monsters on the field in one turn, and that was really huge at the time. It was great for an offensive and defensive position. So in today's term, the deck was known as a Swarm Beatdown, and it began to win. About 1 month after I began competing in the locals, I made it to my first finals with what became the Dragon deck. That Blue Eyes card you see in this picture is still with me to this day, and it's currently being used in my Chaos Max deck. So did I win that tournament? No, but it felt awesome to make the top cut with something that I built myself and took real effort to improve and test. Upper Deck tournaments worked differently then than what they do now. Back then you had to play a number of Swiss rounds and the top cut would go to the finals that took place in a different room. It was there that you had to compete to get first, second, or third. This meant that getting tournament packs was harder because upon release you could only get them via a door prize or winning in the top 3. When Magic Ruler was released, everything changed. Additions like Cyberjar only made it easier to get my swarm strategy going. My dragon deck was built around draw and search power, to basically get my Lord of D and Flute in hand and beat down my opponents with a field of dragons. The deck became even more devastating with the release of Tyrant Dragons, a card that everyone began to fear more than the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Because I was the only person to play dragons, people simply knew me as that chick with the dragon deck. Playing dragons at the time was pretty gutsy because even with the support of Legacy of Darkness, the archetype was still shaky at best, and the few other people who did want to build their own dragon deck, they tried on their first tournament and most of them pretty much gave up on it. While I did build other decks, the dragon deck was my ace. It got me to the finals every week and most of the time it won the top 3. The name Dragon Lady was coined by a kid who wasn't very happy about facing me in the first round of Swiss, and to this day I cannot remember who it was. You see, in the upper deck days, the first matchup in Swiss was randomly determined by putting your names in a hat. The person running the tournament picked the names and called them out. When my name was called out along with my matchup, my opponent simply said, "I don't want to duel against that Dragon Lady." And the name just stuck. Anyone who did not know my first name would just call me Dragon Lady, and the people who did, well, they just call me Dragon Lady anyway out of affection. Being the only dragon duelist, it simply made sense to them. Another store nearby also had Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, and while it was not sanctioned by Upper Deck, word got out that a Dragon Lady played at the official tournament store. It was around the end of 2003 or beginning of 2004 that I retired from Yu-Gi-Oh! My work schedule kept changing and the number of super serious duelists was on the rise. I remember one game in which my opponent scooped and walked away. Some people were becoming sore losers and sore winners. And while the game itself was still fun, the atmosphere, it was not. I did return from time to time just to play casually. Spending a lot of money to keep the deck updated became way too expensive. I had to save to pay rent, and I had to invest in larger things in the future, like I needed to get a new car and I wanted to buy a house. At the time of retirement, I was number 2 in my province. It would have been cool to try for the top spot in the next season, but I was really quite content and satisfied on how I did during the few years I was in the game. And so I decided that I'm done. I'm done with the game, and I'm done being top tier. One thing I did not anticipate on was how the Dragon Lady name would linger in my absence. I came out of retirement in the summer of 2018, and the change to the game was quite a shock. I basically became a student all over again. But the community is super amazing, and they focus more on the fun, and they help other people on how to improve their game. On the second competition I attended, my opponent looked at me and my dragon pendant and asked if I competed in the downtown locals years ago. When I said yes, he gasped and said, "It's you! You're the Dragon Lady! I was just a kid, but everyone knew you." I could not believe what I heard. I had no idea people still talked about me after I left, and for that long. I felt extremely humbled, and I was told that the Dragon Lady was a pseudo-legend, and people wondered where she was. Well, I like to say she's back, but not in the same way. I really do mean it when I say I'm done being top tier. Thanks to the new laid-back attitude of the Yu-Gi-Oh community, I am now more focused on building decks that are fun and keep the positive aspect of the game alive. To promote good sportsmanship and to have good wins and good losses. And that being old doesn't mean we're out of the game. I've pulled some old cards and strategies that gave even some of the meta duelists a run for their money. I sell my dragons. I have multiple dragon decks built in fact, but I'm also rebuilding other decks that I've made years ago. So while I am playing in today's format, I still have a soft spot for the old days, and these days I'm known more as a legacy duelist than a Dragon Lady, even though my primary deck is Chaos Max. So if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. I hope to tell more stories like this in the future about Legacy Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you are curious about some of my old decks, I just might do a profile of them. This is the Dragon Lady saying, be a good sport, play the game, not the fame. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like what you see, be sure to subscribe and click on the little bell for notifications. You can also check me out on Facebook. Link is in the description below. Happy dueling!